There is no period of time in which individuals have not been greedy for money, yet one can certainly say that the greatest intensity and expansion of this desire occurred in those times in which the modest satisfaction of individual life interests, such as the elevation of the religious absolute as the ultimate purpose of existence, had lost its power. At present, as in the period of decline in Greece and Rome, and far beyond the inner state of the individual, the whole aspect of life, the relationships of human beings with one another and with objective culture are colored by monetary interests. It may appear as an irony of history that, as the moment when the satisfying and ultimate purposes of life become atrophied, precisely that value that is exclusively a means and nothing else takes the place of such purposes and clothes itself in their form. In reality, money in its psychological form, as the absolute means and thus as the unifying point of innumerable sequences of purposes, possesses a significant relationship to the notion of God, a relationship that only psychology, which has the privilege of being unable to commit blasphemy, may disclose. The essence of the notion of God is that all diversities and contradictions in the world achieve a unity in him, that he is, according to a beautiful formulation of Nicholas de Cusa, the coincidentia oppositorum. Out of this idea, that in him all estrangements and all irreconcilables of existence find their unity and equalization, there arises the peace, the security, the all-embracing wealth of feeling that reverberate with the notion of God which we hold. There is no doubt that, in their realm, the feelings that money excite possess a psychological similarity with this. In so far as money becomes the absolutely commensurate expression and equivalent of all values, it rises to abstract heights way above the whole broad diversity of objects. It becomes the center in which the most opposed, the most estranged and the most distant things find their common denominator and come into contact with one another. Thus, money actually provides an elevated position above the particular and a confidence in its omnipotence, just as we have confidence in the omnipotence of a highest principle to grant us the particular and the baser at any moment and to be able to transform itself into them. The specific ability and the interest of the Jews in the nature of money has certainly been related to their monotheistic schooling. The temper of a people who for thousands of years became used to lifting their eyes up to a single supreme being, to finding in him, especially as he possessed only a very relative transcendence, the goal and intersection of all particular interests, would be suited to devoting itself to the economic sphere and especially to that value which presents itself as the encompassing unity and the common focal point of all sequences of purposes. Nor does the wild scramble for money, the impulsiveness that money, in contrast with other central values, for example landed property, spreads over the economy and indeed over life in general at all contradict the final pacification in which the effect of money approaches that of a religious mood. Not only is the whole excitement and tension in the struggle for money the precondition for the blissful peace after the conquest, but that calmness of the soul that religion provides, that feeling of standing at the focal point of existence, attains its highest value for consciousness only at the price of having searched and struggled for God. Augustine's comment on the businessman, merito dictum negotium, quia negit odium, quod malum est nec quaerat verum quietum quae est Deus, is quite valid for the industriousness which, constantly compiling means of acquisition, strives for the final goal of financial gain, which is no longer negotium but is its outlet. The frequent animosity of the religious and clerical mentality towards money matters may perhaps be traced to its instinct for the similarity in psychological form between the highest economic and the highest cosmic unity, and to its awareness of the danger of competition between monetary and religious interest, a danger that has been shown to exist not only where the substance of life is economic, but also where it is religious. The rejection of the rate of interest in canon law reflects the general rejection of money as a whole, since the interest rate represents monetary transactions in their abstract purity. The principle of interest rates as such did not yet in itself reflect the full measure of sinfulness. It was frequently believed in the Middle Ages that this was avoided by paying interest in the form of commodities rather than money, but rather it reflected the fact that interest rates were the interest on money paid in money, which implied that the abolition of interest would hit the essence of money at its root. Money all too often easily gives the impression of being the final purpose. For too many people money signifies the end of the teleological sequences, and lends to them such a measure of unified combination of interests, of abstract heights, of sovereignty over the details of life, that it reduces the need to search for such satisfactions in religion. All these connections show that something more than the familiar points of comparison exist. Thus, Hans Sachs, already a representative of popular opinion, concluded that money is the secular god of the world. This refers back to the basic reason for the position of money, which is that it is the absolute means which is elevated to the psychological significance of an absolute purpose. It has been stated, in a not altogether consistent manner, that the relativity of things is the only absolute, and in this respect money is indeed the strongest and most immediate symbol. For money is the embodiment of the relativity of economic values. It embodies the significance of each particular value as a means for the acquisition of another value, but really this mere significance as a means is detached from its particular concrete representative. Despite this, money can become psychologically an absolute value, because it does not have to fear being dissolved into something relative, a prospect that makes it impossible for many substantial values to maintain the claim to be absolute. To the extent that the absolute of our existence, I am not speaking here of the ideal meaning of things, dissolves into motion, relation, and development, the latter replace the former with regard to our need for values. The economic sphere has exemplified this historical type perfectly in the psychologically absolute value character of money. To avoid popular misunderstanding on this point, it must be noted that the formal uniformity of this development in all spheres does not imply the claim that it is uniformly welcome. Greed and avarice. If the character of money as an ultimate purpose oversteps that intensity for an individual in which it is the appropriate expression of the economic culture of his circle, then greed and avarice emerge. I specifically wish to emphasize the dependence of these concepts on the current specific economic conditions, because the same degree of passion in acquiring and holding on to money may be quite normal for the particular importance of money in one context, but may belong to the hypertrophied categories in another. Generally speaking, the threshold for the beginning of a real greed for money will be relatively high in a developed and lively money economy, but relatively low at primitive economic levels, whereas the reverse is true for avarice. Whoever is considered thrifty and reasonable in spending money under restricted circumstances little affected by the money economy will appear to be avaricious under conditions of a quick turnover and easy money. This already illustrates what will be made more evident later, namely that greed and avarice are not identical phenomena, although they have a common basis in the evaluation of money as an absolute purpose. Like all phenomena that have their origin in money, both represent specific stages in the development of tendencies whose lower or higher levels also become visible with reference to other contents.